Hello friends, this is Santhanam from Young Officers. So in the last couple of videos, we had a look at the different sources of history. We had some idea about inscriptions. We had some idea about coins. And in that series, in this video, I want to talk about books. I want to talk about literature. They are generically called as literary sources, and that's what we are going to see in today's video. So when you take literary sources, meaning literature, books written in history, in ancient times or even medieval times, if you look at all those books give us a good amount of historical information. From those books, we are able to construct the different parts of Indian history. We will look at some examples of how this happens. So for that, first I want to talk about one book called as Mrichakatika. Now this book is a fiction. It is a fiction, and this book was written by a person called as Shudraka. So Mrichakatika, written by Shudraka, was written approximately some 2000 years ago. That's how long ago it was written back. Now if you read the story of this book, what does it say? It is a fiction, it is a story, it is a love story of a poor Brahmana who is falling in love with a rich dancing lady, a lady who dances in the king's court. So that's the story of this book. So the Brahmana is there, he is very poor. And this dancing lady, because she dances in the king's court, she is very rich. So this is a love story between these two people. Now if you look at this love story, I told a poor Brahmana and a rich dancing lady. The Brahmana is poor, he doesn't have money, but the lady has lots of money. But this is completely inverted in a sense. How is it inverted? In the Varna system, Brahmana is at the top. This dancing lady is at the bottom. She is called as a Shudra. So, Brahmana is in the top and Shudra is in the bottom as per the Varna system. But still, here the lady is wealthy, she is prosperous, but the Brahmana is poor. So, this means that even 2000 years back, there was Varna system, number one, and number two, in spite of Varna system being present, where there is Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and then Shudra, when all these four are present with Brahmana at the top, Kshatriya next, Vaishya the third and Shudra the fourth, even in this case, there are instances where the Brahmana is poor and the Shudra is rich. So this means that irrespective of which Varna they belonged to, people were actually getting rich or poor in different ways in life. So this story is written 2000 years ago, which means 2000 years ago such type of people were present in the society, and that's why such a story was imagined and written. So by this story alone, we are able to understand what type of people, what kind of people lived in the society. So this is what the first elements of information that we get from this historical source. So this is Mrichakatika. Now the next, I want to talk about one more book. This book is called as Arthashastra. Arthashastra. Now Arthashastra is written more than 2300 years ago. 2300 years. So what does Arthashastra say? Arthashastra says that as per this text, as per this book, this is how the king should rule the country. This is how the different ministers should rule the country. This is how every aspect of government should take place. So for example, Today we have a prime minister, and then there is a chief minister, and then even at the local level there are MLAs, and then you have many ward councillors. So different groups of people are there. So in this book, all these different positions are given, and this book says that as per Arthashastra, as per this text, the king should be at the top and he should have all these different ministers. Different ministers should be there, and these ministers should give their opinion to the king, who will conduct his business. But then the king cannot rule all of the kingdom. So what does the king do? He creates multiple sub-ministers, multiple provincial leaders, like how we have chief ministers in India. There is a prime minister and different chief ministers, right? So like that, in the ancient times also, there was the king and many provincial leaders, who is the equivalent of chief ministers. So these provincial leaders will be there, they will also have ministers, and they will also have government servants. All these details are given in this Arthashastra. So from this book, what can we learn? We can learn that ancient Indians had a great governmental setup with so many different government officials, each performing their own duty, like what we have today. So today we have a judge, we have a policeman, we have a person who is working for the government, like for example MLA. So a judge, a policeman, and MLA. A judge is working to give justice to people. A policeman or a policewoman is trying to ensure that there is law and order. The MLA is trying to represent the people's concerns and people's issues, and he is going to take forward those issues, which means all three of them are three different parts of the government who are actually working for the sake of the people. And these three different parts are three different officials, like what we have today. Back then also they had different officials, which is listed in this Arthashastra. So this is one more book. Apart from Arthashastra and apart from Mrichakatika, we can look at one more source, and that source will be Rig Veda. Now Rig Veda, when was it written? So there is a lot of confusion with regards to that. Some people say it was written very old, several thousands and thousands of years old, but there are some people who say that it was written approximately 2500 years ago, approximately. So in this book, what do they describe? They describe the different gods, they describe the different rituals, they describe the different sacrifices. So because of these details present in this text called as Rig Veda, we are able to understand how ancient Indians worshipped different gods, how they performed the different rituals and sacrifices, meaning yajna, how they perform the yajna. So these kinds of details we get to learn from Rig Veda. So we have so far seen three books. One book was a fiction named Mrichakatika. The next book was actually for administration, which is called as Arthashastra. The third book is called as Rig Veda, which is about religion. So these books are actually of different genres, meaning they are of different characteristic features. They talk about different aspects of life. Fiction, you have administration, you have religion. But these different books, all these books which are written, they all give us different perspectives about Indian society, Indian history. Now, this is something that we have seen, this is something that we have learnt now. All these books have one thing in common, which is they are all written by Indian scholars. They are all written by Indian scholars. So it is the Indians who have written all these books. But when we try to construct history using literary sources, using books, we can also go and read many foreign scholars, foreign scholars have also written books about India. So we can read their books also. For example, I will talk about one particular book called as Indica. Now Indica is a book written by a person called as Megasthenes. Now Megasthenes is actually a Greek traveler. He is a Greek traveler. He is from Greece, or at least his language is Greek. So Megasthenes is the one who wrote this book called as Indica. Now in this book Indica, he writes about India. Now how can this Greek write about India? That's a question that we might get. It is because he came to India, he visited India, he stayed here and he observed all of India and wrote about it. So from Megasthenes' book also we get information about Indian society. He has also written about the status of women, how women were present in India, how high they were in the society or how low they were. What were the different administrative machinery, what were the different public officials present in India, who are the different groups of people in India, what are the different religious practices in India. He has written about all these things in this book Indica. So therefore, from foreign scholars also, we tend to know a lot about Indian society. So with Indian scholars and foreign scholars, we put together and construct the Indian history. So that's what we do. Now both these sources of information are important. Indian sources are important because Indian scholars themselves have written a lot of details because they actively took part in the Indian society. But Megasthenes is a foreigner who came from outside of India. His book is also important, and that's because he is a foreigner, he would not have any bias, meaning he will not try to impress anybody. You take the case of Indian scholars. Many a times these scholars are paid by the Indian kings and therefore they try to not offend the Indian king. But Megasthenes being a foreigner, his views are very neutral and therefore we learn about the foreign accounts also. It gives a third man's perspective. So that's why we use both Indian literary sources, Indian books written by Indian scholars, as well as foreign literary sources, foreign books written by foreign scholars. Both combined, we are able to understand the Indian past and we are able to construct the Indian history. So this is how Indian history is constructed. That becomes the end of this video. See you in the next one. Thank you.